Hello, Blenders, and welcome to episode number 204 of ReelBlend, a podcast that thinks we should start calling it the Academy of Snores. The Academy of Snores, because they're boring, right?
I get it.
The Academy of Bores. Of Bores?
That was much better than I thought it was going to be.
Do that thing you do. Come on,
Don't.
bail me out
Don't.
here. On this week's show. What the Oscar controversy? Was it bad, Kev? How was it?
It was a lot worse than I thought it was going to be, actually.
And that shows like what we think of you, Sean, because it was infinitely better than I thought it was going to be.
Oh, I was waiting for like gold.
And to me, that was gold.
Cyrano finally hits theaters, and director Joe Wright is going to be joining the show. I'm Sean O'Connell, the managing editor here at Cinema Blended, joined as always on the ReelBlend podcast by Jake Hamilton of Fox 32 in Chicago. Hi, Jake. How are you?
Hi, buddy. You're very handsome.
Yeah,
why are you all dressed up? Do you have a basketball game to coach?
No, because we got our asses whooped in that game. So,
but you're like wearing a suit.
Every once in a while, I like to just not wear a t-shirt, and it shows how infrequently I do this because both of my boys looked at me like, "Are you all right? Like, what's the matter?
What's below the waist?"
Oh,
or
pants.
Wait, hold on, let me phrase. What's
pants?
Wow, you're wearing the full suit.
The whole thing. Yeah, I try to mirror Kevin McCarthy.
That seems
Fox
so
5
uncomfortable
in Washington D.C. Hi, Kev. How are you?
Did you notice that Sean went to Jake first after Jake praised his joke, and I was not so praiseworthy, even though I was.
I mean, to be fair, who's the favorite child now?
To be fair, it wasn't his joke. I have to take the blame
or the credit,
depending on who I'm talking to.
There is no rhyme or reason to who I choose. I literally choose it in the moment. And
no, I'm totally kidding. But I also want to give you credit. Not only does he have the full suit, he also went black socks too, which is like you really committed to like the whole like.
I'm in it. Well, I don't do it like I said. I don't do it often. So when I do it, I try to do it right. So if you're watching us on YouTube and you can comment on the suit that I'm wearing, thank you for joining us. Please head down. Give us a like and a subscribe. Hold on. I got a weird joke that just popped up. For our audio listeners, if you want to join us in video form, of course, head over to youtube.com/ReelBlend podcast. Of course, we are available all the different places where you get your podcast needs met. On Mondays, we drop an episode of ReelBlend Premium. This week, it's going to be a mailbag. Always a lot of fun to do the mailbags. You guys send us some messages, some questions. We answer them. You get ad-free versions of the full ReelBlend main show, and then a newsletter that I write every other week. So check the description of this week's show for information on where to sign up. We have an interview this week. Joe Wright, the director of Atonement, has a new movie coming out, sort of new, called Cyrano. It was in the Oscar race for a little while.
Was it?
And then they kept pushing it back.
Yeah.
So now it's coming to theaters, and we recorded this a while ago. So I want to give you guys the disclaimer that we recorded this stuff with Joe Wright before we switched up our cameras and all of our audio and visual stuff. So it might be a little bit jarring to hear that we are a little bit different. Perfectly listenable, according to Gabe's standards. So we just want to give you guys a warning. But in the meantime, the content's still great. The hosts are still the best in the business. And we have Joe Wright from Cyrano on the ReelBlend podcast.
I had an interesting conversation with Denzel Washington for the Fences junket, where he was talking about the idea of bringing that show from the stage to the actual movie and the idea of what a camera can do when you have it in someone's face versus somebody sitting in the back of a theater and not knowing the emotion or being able to see it specifically. I know this started off as a play, then it went to a musical, and obviously went to a movie. So I'm wondering for you in particular, camera choices and kind of what that did since you had your actors on stage, but also now in a film, and kind of how that changed emotionally for you as a storyteller.
Yeah, I think people are often surprised when they ask me what my favorite shot of a movie is, and I always respond by saying a close-up. There's something to me beautiful and noble about seeing the human face projected on a 20-foot screen. It kind of immortalizes the human face, and so certainly for me, I think one of our strongest tools as filmmakers is the close up and wanting to get in there with the characters, and really see deep into their eyes. And then also the rhythm created, when you're watching a play, you're able to, choose where you're looking. Whereas with a film, that choice is really given to the director. And so we're able to create emotional rhythms that would not exist, visual rhythms that would not exist in the theater.
Thank you.
Joe, I've never acted in a film. I've never directed a film. But I would assume that emotions like anger and fear are a little bit easier to both personify and capture on film. But your movie is fueled by love. It's fueled by this esoteric concept of love. And so I just wanted to get some tricks for capturing things like love at first sight. You do something great with the audio where it drops out and you only hear the breathing of the characters. But so many times through, you have to convince the audience that they're looking at that this story that's powered by something that's hard to capture, I would imagine.
Yeah, I mean, I think we all come at life with a lot of defenses, and one or two of the defense mechanisms we use are irony and cynicism. And I wanted specifically with this movie to make a film without either of those. And so it's really about dropping your defenses to geek out. I've been working with the same dialogue editor for my entire career, Becky Ponting. And she and I have developed a technique of using breaths to accentuate the connection or disconnection between characters. And we found that if you have two characters breathing and the audience can hear it, if you have two characters breathing in sync with each other, then that connects them. If you have two characters breathing out of time with each other, then that disconnects them. And so your reference to the breathing in the scenes is actually really, really important. And we spend many, 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 many hours working on the breaths and making those breaths as revealing of the characters as possible. And yeah, so that's so working on those breaths is certainly one little trick we use.
That's outstanding. Very effective.
Yeah. Joe, I think we should all be so lucky as to have a Cyrano in our life, someone that kind of has our ear and can kind of, point us in the right direction and maybe verbalize things for us that we're not capable of verbalizing. I was wondering, who was that for you as a director? Who was your cinematic Cyrano? Who was the person that maybe when you got into the business would kind of whisper some stuff in your ear, point you in the right direction, and maybe sort of help you verbalize what you were having a tough time verbalizing?
There is a wonderful actor who now is a director called Kathy Burke. She's a comedian as well. She won the Palme d'Or for Gary Oldman's Nil by Mouth. She in fact introduced me to Gary when I was, still a teenager. I've known her since I was 14, and she has been my mentor ever since. And she's someone who I would go to for advice and for a kind of clarity check, really. She'd ask what my intentions were and were they fear-based or were they coming from the right creative place. Kathy Burke, if you don't know her work, look it up. She's an extraordinary human and actor and artist.
Joe, as from a filmmaking perspective, I've really admired your work for a long time. The work you do with your DP. I mean, you have a great relationship in terms of like what you do with your camera being a leading character. I wanted to ask you, there's a oneer specifically in this film with Dinklage, which is on the stairs, which is just absolutely incredible, the way that fight kind of plays out. I do want to talk to you about that, but first I was wondering if you could go back to the Atonement oneer on the beach. And kind of what lessons you learned from that oneer, particularly what struggles you had on achieving that oneer particularly, and kind of how that's helped you achieve different oneers since, specifically the Dinklage one. But because we are a filmmaking show, and I've never talked to you about Atonement before, that shot is one of the greatest shots of all time. And I just wanted to get pick your brain on that and what you kind of learned from that.
Thank you. We were still shooting on film in those days, and so we did 4 takes. The first take was terrible. The second take was pretty bad. The third take looked like it was all right, but the signal dropped out between the camera and video. So we had no way of watching it back, right? Thought, well, we better do another take because we might not have got it. So then we did a 4th take, and the Steadicam operator collapsed, and so we didn't get a 4th take. Obviously, with film, you have to wait for the film to be sent to the lab, and then the film comes back from the lab, and we sat pensively in the screening room waiting for the shot to be projected, and the relief was extraordinary when we realized that we'd actually managed to get the shot. I think the shot itself is really a testament to the guys in it. You know, we had 1,000 extras from a town up north called Redcar, and they are what make that shot. You know, I spent a long time working with them and developing each little vignette and each character, and they're what make that shot. You know, we were just there to capture it. And so I guess what I've taken away from that is that what's in front of the camera is certainly what's most important, and a way of working with, you know, background or extras or supporting, you know, artists is vital and really rewarding.
Yeah, and Joe, you did break up for just a second there. I wanted to confirm something. So you did the take. You did it 4 times. It was the 3rd take, the one that you lost VO on, that was actually the one that worked.
Yeah, that was luckily the one that worked, but we didn't know that until the following day.
That's terrifying. That's terrifying.
Unbelievable.
That gives me anxiety listening to that.
It was a low budget film, you know, so we put a lot of our resources into that one day, and we would not have been able to repeat it and I had no coverage, you know, I had nothing.
And that was Dunkirk, wasn't it? Yeah, which is crazy. Yeah.
Joe, I've been an enormous fan of yours for years. I've been lucky enough to go to one of your sets. I went to Pan and watched you film that. And Atonement, I don't know if I've ever told you this, but Atonement was my very first junket, and that brought me over to London, and we got to see it in a tiny screening room. And after it ended, you and Mr. McAvoy were waiting there, and we drank wine, and you asked us what we thought of the film, and I thought, is this how it is? Like, is this what happens? We just come out of screenings and talk to the director, and it's not like that at all. So that was a very special memory. But going as far back as Atonement, and of course in Anna Karenina, which I'm an enormous fan of, you seem very interested as a storyteller in the physical toll that comes with keeping a secret from someone. And so I was just wondering how that interest in that subject matter has evolved for you from film to film, and maybe what are some of the things that you've learned by digging into that as a motivator?
That's fascinating. I've honestly never thought of that before. I've never seen that through line. I mean, I think I'm interested in less in secrets and more in truth. I'm interested in film and its ability to express subjective truth. subjective reality. Obviously very different from objective reality, and our point of view, and so I guess that speaks to the nature of secrets. That secrets are kind of our biggest secrets is how we experience the world around us, and we try and express that through film and through talking to each other as well, and how we. What I'm interested in is how we connect, and that's what I love about the story of Cyrano, is that it's really a story about our need for human connection, and our often failure to achieve that, and especially at this time, and we'd spent so many months in lockdown without any human connection at all. And so to make this film during the pandemic felt very important, felt urgent, because we were making a film about people connecting, or as I say, failing to connect. I'm going to think about that. I'd never thought of it as being about a through line of secrets. I've got to think about that.
I hope I wasn't wrong.
No, I think that's interesting. Sorry. Anyway, Jake, go ahead.
No. So I saw Cyrano on stage whenever I was in high school. I saw it again on stage when I was in college. Obviously, I grew up with Roxanne and then obviously with this film. But despite seeing it, the same story multiple times, I never felt like I was watching the same story multiple times, because it's been able to be interpreted so many different ways, which I find fascinating. Why do you think that this one particular story is able to be interpreted so many different ways in so many different genres and mediums? And is the sky the limit? Like, what are the other different ways that this story could be told?
I think often if one tries to achieve something universal, one fails. But if one tries to achieve something really specific, it becomes universal, right?
Oh, interesting.
And I think what Rostand wrote was a very, very specific story about a very, very specific character and a very specific dilemma. And somehow that has meant that it has this kind of universality to it, that has continued over the past, couple of 100 years. I think it speaks to our desire to be seen, and our fear of intimacy. And so I feel like it's a story that perhaps will continue to be played in different forms. Just like Shakespeare is, I mean, I can think of like 5 productions of Shakespeare of Macbeth on at the moment, so it's kind of like that. It's part of the canon that will find new iterations with each new generation, I hope.
Joe, McGarvey's one of the greatest DPs working today. He's an absolute genius.
You said so.
Please tell him I said so. And obviously, we already referenced the Atonement shot, but you've worked with him on many films. And I was wondering, was there a moment where it clicked for you that he was going to be your guy? Because you see a lot of different filmmakers collaborate with the same artist over the years, like Quentin Tarantino had the same editor for so long, and then Scorsese, you find someone that you can work with. So was there a particular moment where you realized that he was going to be like the DP that you wanted to work with, and then now as you continue forward in your career, when you guys are on set, how your language works, how that talking back and forth in terms of the shots you're setting up and what you want? Is he? I would imagine it's an interesting thing to have somebody as a through line like that.
Yeah, I guess when I give him a call, to say, right, Seamus, we've got a new movie, he always says, "Oh, we're getting the band back together," and it's kind of like a band, I'm not sure, which instrument I'm playing, but it is kind of like a band. And so Seamus and Sarah Greenwood, the designer, and Jacqueline Duran, the costume designer, we get back together and we tell another story, or we go on the road again. There's a shorthand that we have, and I trust Seamus, and I know the tone of his voice when I've come up with a dreadful idea. His voice will kind of go up a couple of octaves, and he'll go, that's, yeah, we could do that. I know that means it's a really bad idea and that we're not going to do that. And I know when I come up with an idea that is good, I know the tone of voice he gives me then, we're very kind of action orientated, by which I mean we theorize to some extent, but really it's about the practice that that is important. And I just love him as a human being. He's a kind, compassionate, witty, intelligent man with a wonderful use of language, and all of that somehow transfers through the camera and onto the screen in the form of light. It's kind of magical.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Joe, there's a line from Cyrano early on in the film that struck me so much I had to write it down, and it says, "What lasts is compromise and sacrifice." I'm curious if that's a mantra for filmmaking. Should fledgling directors maybe get that tattooed on their arm so they, as a reminder of what to expect?
No, I wouldn't give that advice to anyone, really. I think there's I think a kind of be bold and reckless is what I'd suggest to the students of film, if you need to forge permission, yeah.
Joe, you don't only have a great history of adapting novels, you have a great history of taking big swings and going after the big novels, whether it's it's this iconic play or Anna Karenina, Pride and Prejudice, even Peter Pan. So with knowing that you can tackle the big ones, the ones that we all grew up reading, that we've seen different adaptations for, are there any works out there that scare you? Are there anyone that you look at and go, God, it'd be great to adapt that one, but I don't know if I can tackle it?
Moby Dick. That would be a bit of a reach, I think.
I now really want to see the Joe Wright version of Moby Dick. I'm going to be honest with you.
A lot of people said Dune couldn't be made into a movie, and now we're getting a second one to see
absolutely.
what happens.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think for me, the reason why I love doing these kind of literary adaptations is because I get to learn about literature. I went to a pretty terrible school in London. I didn't get much of an education. On top of that, I'm dyslexic. So for me, each film is not about what I know, but about what I want to know. It's about, I want to know about Tolstoy and Anna Karenina. I'm going to make a film about that, and through that I can learn. And the same with this. It's about learning, really.
Joe, I was watching a documentary the other day called Being James Bond. It was about the Craig era of Bond, and I saw this incredible shot behind the scenes of Sam Mendes directing the scene where Judi Dench's character is dying as M in Skyfall. And as he's behind the camera, like, you see him like essentially lose himself as a director and become an audience member, and he's just crying behind the camera. He's so immersed in the moment. And I just wonder, like, and I would imagine that's happened to you as a filmmaker, because you're directing and you kind of have the helm of everything. But I was wondering if you have any moments like that in your films, or maybe you were behind the camera watching Oldman going, damn, that is Churchill, or or was there, do you find yourself going that far, like immersing yourself and almost forgetting you're directing? Now, I'm not saying Mendes was forgetting that, but he obviously let it affect him in a way where he was crying during it.
Yeah, kind of always, actually, is the answer to that. you know, I get the best seat in the house. You know, I get to sit next to the camera. I have a little box. I sit next to the camera lens, and I'm there watching the actors, and they're doing something extraordinary. You know, and often I am. I forget that I'm directing and that I am just there with them, and I'm so emotionally engaged in what they're doing. There have been times where, and on Cyrano, where I had to, you know, cover my face because I was making too much noise, and it's a great privilege, you know, to get to express cinematically your feelings about the world and about love, and do it without cynicism and without irony. That's what I've tried to do with this movie, you know, and just express how you feel, you know. It's good.
Noise from laughing? Were there moments where it was catching up?
Noise from laughing and crying and crying. Yeah,
it is a very emotional.
I'm very easy to tears, I must say. You know, I'm trying to give a note, you know, and I'm just talking to the actor and saying, I just want to, it's just, you know, and it's like, that's a bit embarrassing.
That was me in your Anna Karenina when Jude rips the note up and throws it up in the air. And I remember when it went up in the air, I said, if this comes down as snowflakes, I'm going to give this a perfect grade. And it came down as snowflakes, and the tears came, and I gave it a perfect grade. It was it's absolutely brilliant.
Thank you.
Joe, I'd love for you to talk about, because I deeply admire your editing techniques, and quite often they sync up with music. And it has to be the case with Cyrano as well, too. You have these fantastic songs that have a Springsteen level storytelling to them, and in one particular song where the soldiers are singing about tell him, and the camera's pulling back through. Can you just talk a bit about editing and choreographing your camera movements to go to the music that already existed and you know that fans of the show are going to want to see?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a very strong believer in preparation, and I storyboard a lot of the films, and I shotlist all of them. So I try to have a kind of very clear idea of what I'm doing when I walk on set. That's not to say that it can't change and adapt to what the actors bring on the day. But that is true even more so with the musical numbers in the film, because you're working to such a strict, you know, timeline. So everything has to fit within the music as it's written. So therefore you need to know exactly where your shots are and where your cuts are and how you're going to be playing it. Otherwise the whole thing will kind of fall apart, really. So it was very carefully planned out and designed, and that I really enjoyed. But I also wanted to make sure that it didn't become like a music video, you know.
Sure.
My editor Valerio Bonelli and I, we've worked together for a while now, and he is both technically masterful and emotionally very available. And so he did a lot of kind of pulling and stretching of moments. So there's some stuff where, you know, the shot is very infinitesimally sped up just so that it works with the next kind of beat of the music or whatever. There's a lot of trickery going on there. And then, you know, obviously in pre-production, I'd worked through the songs with Seamus McGarvey, my DP, and we had kind of very carefully planned them, and then we got to rehearse them as well. So there's a whole process that we go through.
Thank you.
It's fun. I like doing musicals, you know.
Well, we'd love to see you do more of them. Joe, we are running out of time, so I'm going to take us out on this. You are a director who has delivered films that have yielded actors Oscar nominations and in some case Oscar wins, whether it's Gary Oldman or Keira Knightley or Saoirse Ronan, I believe, Vanessa Redgrave. I'm sort of curious. A lot of people refer to you as an actor's director. So I'm curious, from your perspective, what are you giving your actors that, not that other directors haven't figured out, but other directors maybe don't have the batting average that you do in that statistic. So what is it that you feel like you're giving them that maybe other directors aren't?
I'd love to be thought of as an actor's director. I can think of no higher praise. I don't know. I just talk to them. I think a lot of people are scared of actors. They kind of they think of them as being like weird sort of magicians or something, and also the notion of an actor comes with a lot of baggage, especially in this whole kind of celebrity culture that we're living through now. So it's important for me that I talk to them as human beings. I'm not trying to kind of handle them. Do you know what I mean? We're collaborators. And the acting department is just another department. It's important that the lead actor feels like they're the head of department and that they support the other members of their department. And we talk about the craft. I understand that acting is 99% perspiration and 1% inspiration. So we talk about the craft, the hard work of it, the graft of it, and then that allows them a trust and a space to be inspired, and then I have to be ready to catch that.
It's a little bit remarkable that we made it this far in the interview without celebrating your cast, of which the ensemble is spectacular. We can't wait for people to go see Cyrano and see how great they are in it and how great your work is. Joe, we know this is the end of your press day. Can't thank you enough for taking the time to join us on the podcast. Hope you enjoyed the conversation. We were really honored to have you.
Yeah, I did. Thank you, gentlemen. That's been fun. Thank you.
No problem. Take care. Have a great day. Thank you very much to Joe Wright for coming on ReelBlend to join the show. We were talking about the fact that, it's weird to do, and we haven't done an interview, I don't think, for the show like this, where we conducted it a long time ago, and then we're asked to sit on it. And this one in particular, because it was like sort of a limited release.
Yeah.
And then they kept moving it back, and they just wanted the content of the interview to sort of time up with the release. It was kind of
Krasinski was
to
the
go back
last
and
time
listen
it
to
happened,
it.
I think.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, Krasinski.
Krasinski was actually
was that over a
longer.
year? That was over a year that we had to sit on John Krasinski. But this was what we recorded. I mean, even when things were normal, if I remember right, Gabe, correct me if I'm wrong, we recorded Joe Wright in October of 2021 with the idea that we were going to have to sit on it for a couple of weeks. Until December.
Yeah.
And
Jake,
then
what you're saying is right.
It's Joe Right.
Quiet place down. Okay, you two. but we're glad we were able to get him on the show because he was a really interesting conversation. And Kevin, I love that the question you had about the unbroken shot for Atonement. And it feels like he could talk about that, endlessly because he knows those complications and he only had, certain chances to get it. That was
Dunkirk.
Yes. It was.
Which is really fascinating.
He did Dunkirk before.
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously,
I guess in a weird way, he's done 2 Dunkirk movies, right? Because he did Darkest Hour as well.
That's true. Well, and
he's done double the Dunkirk that Nolan has.
What's interesting to me though is that when I watched Atonement, this is another reason why I love Christopher Nolan. Like in terms of Dunkirk, I didn't know that story. I knew about the historical significance of it, but I didn't know the full detail of the story. I learned a lot of history watching that movie. Not that I hadn't heard about it, but when I watched Atonement, I didn't even connect the dots that it was Dunkirk. Because not that I wasn't paying attention to it, but it just wasn't something that resonated. I was more invested in the scene, the emotions of it, the unbroken shot. But it's crazy now. I haven't seen that shot since I've seen Nolan's movie. I'm very curious to kind of watch that scene again or that movie again, just to get the perspective of is Dunkirk a prominent aspect of that scene? Do they mention it? Is it? I don't remember the exact dialogue.
I don't remember at all
specifically. I just remember the shot blowing me away when I saw it in theaters, but I never connected the dots that it was Dunkirk until later, after seeing Nolan's movie. I was like, oh wait, this has been they've used Dunkirk in other films, obviously over history because it's a major historical event, but just interesting.
I'm waiting for Atonement to show up on TBS or TNT so I can try and catch up with it again because it's been a while since I've seen it. So
Sci-Fi, it's going to be on Sci-Fi any day now.
Or at least the History Channel, right? Kind of makes sense that it should show up.
Well, no,
on
there's
that.
not enough aliens for it to be in the History Channel.
Let's get to the topic of the week that is the most interesting to us, which is the Academy's decision to pre-record 8 categories and 8 different winners from the Oscar ceremony, and then to include them in the main show as part of a sort of edited package, in an effort to, I would assume, reduce the running time of the main show. So, I've seen some people have misconceptions about how this is being put out, saying that they're removing these categories completely. They're not doing that. They're gonna give them out an hour before the telecast starts, and then recognize those people during the show. Not enough, in my opinion, obviously, and you're removing some of major categories. They are film editing. Film editing alone. Like if you just said film editing, this would be
the category that is often referred to as the precursor for Best Picture.
Correct. I think there's
an entire 1/3 of the process.
Yeah.
There's like the ancillary things, not to reduce their importance, but like we talk about makeup and even score and all these things are like pieces of a production. But the 3 tent poles are pre-production, which is largely a writing process, production, which is largely shooting it, and there's a ton of things that are involved outside of that, and then editing it. it's a major part of filmmaking.
Even live shows are edited.
Yeah,
there's a person literally in a booth editing.
Camera 1, camera 2, camera 3, camera 4.
Editing happens live too. So my argument is that, and Sean will read the rest of these categories. Every single one of these that's being taken out, you would not be able to broadcast the Academy Awards without these people.
Yeah, well, that's what someone said. Like they should do the Oscars within one shot, without sound, without music, and the presenters aren't allowed to wear makeup.
But again, they're not removing the category completely. They're just not giving it. They're not giving it the attention that we might argue that it deserves.
I don't buy into that. They're
not giving out. It's not like they're giving it. They're not giving out an editing Oscar. They're still going to give out an editing Oscar.
Okay, imagine it's your time.
Sure.
To win. Imagine like you're the front runner. You're going to win best score this year. You're Hans Zimmer.
Johnny
and then
Greenwood.
You find out, no, Hans Zimmer's going to win. And you find out like, hey, your category's been deemed. I'm going to be honest with you. The Critics' Choice Awards does something similar, and that pisses me off too. We give out commercials during the bathroom breaks.
Let me read out the rest of the categories. Yes. All right, settle down. It's film editing, original score, documentary short subject, makeup and hairstyling, production design. That's a major category. Short film animated, short film live action, and sound is the final one. And sound, didn't they already combine sound and sound effects like a couple of years ago?
It was sound mixing and sound editing. They combined.
Right.
Okay, gotcha.
Also, what's fascinating to me is so somebody thinks that we should watch the screenplays win their award, but we can't watch the editor win or the composer win. So how did you decide that someone winning an adapted or an original screenplay award is that much more important or more interesting for your ratings than editing or score? So like when, Paul Thomas Anderson gets up there to possibly win his screenplay award for Licorice Pizza, is that going to give you more of a ratings boost than Hans Zimmer winning for Dune for original score? I would argue more people know who Hans Zimmer is.
But not just that, like what I'm concerned about is like what insufferable comedic bits are we going to get from 3 actors who I generally like? I like Amy Schumer and Wanda Sykes and Regina Hall, but like what bits are we going to get that you are now deeming more important than honoring the person who scored a film or the person who edited a film? Like what I couldn't tell you any of the bits that have come out of the Oscars over the last 10 years, but there are incredible moments that have come out of editing and come out of score. Like Gabe said, whenever we started this conversation on the text thread last night, like basically, would we have said F you to John Williams over the last 30 years?
If John Williams were in this category, let's say, would they have cut score?
Yes.
Because he's getting up in age, could be the last one, I mean, I know Zimmer's a huge name, obviously. But like one of the ones that I put on parallel with editing and score and production design would be cinematography. How come cinematography made the cut? Like I would love to know the conversations behind the scenes of how they
Didn't
decided
they-
which ones go.
Wasn't cinematography up to be cut like a couple years ago?
Well, yeah, keep in mind, they tried to do something similar in 2018, and there was such an uproar similar to what there is right now. And I'm hoping that there ends up being a similar result where they come back and say, okay, yeah, we're sorry, we made a mistake. We'll put him back in.
It literally makes no sense. I mean, because like again, cinematography and screenplay are great examples of other awards. Like cinematographer, so theoretically, that goes to Power of the Dog, or that goes to Dune, or wherever it goes. You're telling me that the person who gets up to win the cinematography award is going to boost your ratings, but Zimmer wouldn't if he won for score. It's cherry picked. It makes no sense. But also, at the end of the day, this is the most important thing here. This is the most important thing about this situation. No one's watching award shows anymore. Okay, so like the Emmys, the Grammys, the Oscars, they're all massively down, plummeted, worst ratings of all time. These shows are designed now to just honor the art form, right? So at the end of the day, the Oscars, I understand you're going for ratings, I understand that, but like at the end of the day, people have way too many other things to watch now. There's too many streaming services, etc. People are not tuning in. They're waiting for the next day to see what won, and then they move on with their lives. But in this particular situation, you know, we're talking about a show that specifically honors the art form, and you're going to give people the cinematographer award. You're going to give the screenplay awards out, but you're not going to give the rest of these awards out. There's some weird reasoning happening here that makes no sense. Because at the end of the day,
what do they
think
think is going to happen? Like, do they think that there are millions of people or at home that weren't going to watch and are going to hear this news and go, well, since they're not giving out sound and score, I'll tune in. Like, I'm sold.
I don't know if you know this, but PJ and all of his teenager friends are now making plans to watch.
That's what was keeping them away.
My brother never watches the Oscars, but now he is.
Now he's gonna watch it.
He can't wait.
You guys are being cynical for comedy's sake.
No, we're not.
No. I generally think that they think that their ratings are going to just skyrocket because of this.
They're not.
Okay, well then let me finish my point. I don't necessarily think they're saying like original score is holding us back. I think that they approached this with, we need to make this shorter, and they just started chopping things. Like they just started picking
those 8?
Well, I don't know, but my point is, I'm saying they didn't go original score is boring, let's not have it. I think that they said we're going to use this strategy of pre-recording them, cutting them down, which other shows have done, in order to lower the runtime of the show. I don't necessarily think that they're picking it saying like no editing is going to make people tune in.
Yeah, let me play devil's advocate from this perspective. Every year we watch the show and we all of us say it's too long. Show's too long. It is. Yeah. And so if you have to shorten it, how are you going to shorten it? Like,
very easy.
Okay.
Very easy. You make a 2-hour show. Okay. And then the show itself is literally about honoring the arts. So you get rid of like these wacky bits. You can have a big opener if you want, Billy Crystal style, totally cool with that. And then like maybe a couple bits interspersed throughout. But nobody is watching these award shows anymore for bits. They're watching them, if you're a movie fan, to watch your artist get honored. So instead of making a 3.5-hour show, you make it a 2-hour show and you do all the categories, and then you intersperse a couple bits in between. You get your runtime, and that's it. The reason they go 3 hours is because of ads. You know, they're trying to make more money. Sure. You make more money if you're an extra hour. Of course you do. I mean, you sell a spot. And if you're in that last hour block and everyone's waiting for Best Picture and Best Actor and Best Actress, and you build those ads out, it's all money, man. And
let me throw this in as well, too, because I guarantee that they can track on a metric when the audience is tuned in and tuned out.
100%.
Right. So I bet they went over their past telecasts to see during which categories, you know, were the people tuning out. And like you said, so if you have a 3-hour telecast and you put your best ad space in the last hour, because that's when everybody's going to tune in for the big awards, right? I see what you're saying, Kev. You make it 2 hours, but then every ad in the middle is like not Super Bowl level, you know, but more.
But is NBC going to do that?
Early?
Like, the Winter Olympics just had the lowest ratings in the history of the Winter Olympics. I guarantee you NBC isn't going to go through and go, fuck bobsledding. No one watched that. Let's get rid of that. Well, they're not going to start cherry picking the sports because
it's not a 1-to-1 because of where they were, the time that everything was being broadcast. A lot of the sports didn't have the premier
all of these
athletes.
major events are just
declining.
Because,
They just
because
are.
no one's
But they're different
watching
animals, but they're different
live TV anymore. I mean, at the end of the day, I'll just look at me for 1 second. Look at me for 1 second. Okay, for example, right now I'm in the middle of binging Pam and Tommy. That show's been out for 6 weeks. I just started it 2 days ago. Like, no, my point is like I'm not sitting down every day at the same time to watch anything anymore. Like when Euphoria comes out or whatever, I watch it the next day. Live TV is just not what it is anymore. We have too much access. So I want
to comment on that while you're mentioning the live TV point. I think we're talking about like how do we fit this into a broadcast model, and I think maybe the change that needs to happen is that this isn't necessarily a broadcast TV show. Like this isn't necessarily a primetime network TV type of sell.
Not anymore.
Not anymore, but I think it could be big in a different space. I think there, depending on where your audience is willing to move. But if you look at large events with live streaming, like you look at people who stream, like the Game Awards, for instance, that streams on Twitch and YouTube, and they
huge
stream
numbers.
Online. I think that's the sort of system, and I don't necessarily know exactly what that means for them. Maybe there's a way that they can do, hey, we're going to do the full broadcast, we're going to stream it, but for this very valuable network primetime, we're going to have a cut down version of it that airs there for, someone who's just flipping through the channels on their cable
I know what
box.
you're saying, because in a way, it's not like sports. It doesn't have to be live, right? Like,
Yes
why
and
aren't
no.
they
It just
doing it?
depends
in
on-
advance?
But you run the risk of like I don't want to watch the Oscars after I've already read on Twitter who won Best Actor.
That's the problem you'd have to solve, but it could be that the last hour and a half is packed with everything everyone wants to see, and for the 2.5, 3 hours before that, you can watch a live stream that has everything in the same production that you can sit there and
This is
watch.
what they're doing.
Is
This is what
it
they're
like
doing.
a half? Is it a
that's
half empty
still-
auditorium? Like they're going to be people like still
Well, no.
streaming in from the red carpet on the outside?
No, you're missing my point. I'm not saying do it differently. I'm saying instead of taking 4 hours of primetime TV and devaluing it with a 4-hour chunk of stuff that people don't want to watch, you live stream. So on Twitch, on YouTube, wherever, or on their own website. They're a giant network. It'd be on their own website. You can tune in, you can cast it to your TV, you can sit there and watch it. It is the Oscars. It is the show that we want it to be. Everyone gets to go on stage in front of everyone and have their moment, no matter what their category is.
Interesting.
But then at the 2.5 hours in, it also starts broadcasting live on TV, and all of those categories are the ones that they really want to show, because it's going to have all the major actors in it. It's going to have this, that, and the other.
Dude, I've seen
I think
ABC's
that's-
primetime lineup. It ain't that valuable.
Yeah.
Like, what are we? We're missing a new episode of American Idol so that we don't get Hans
My
Zimmer.
point
Like,
is, though,
it's not that good at real estate.
it's one pitch, but my point is they're trying to cut it down, and the people who actually watch it are upset about them cutting it down. I'm saying I think that
And the
it
people
needs-
that they want to watch it aren't going to.
Right.
my-
That's the
okay,
whole point. They're
okay.
cutting stuff for people who aren't going to tune in anyways.
But I think
That's
that
the weird
my
part.
point is it needs I think it's not a matter of what is the content on TV. It's are they putting it on the right place?
If next month they end up doing this truncated version of the Oscars and it ends up being the exact same ratings as it was last year, just astronomically low, is that still a victory for them considering it's low but less time it was low?
It's going to be lower.
I don't know how people justify that. Yeah.
The only thing that I feel like, and then again, I don't like that they did this, but I do think it was smart from a marketing perspective, because when they announced this the other day, the Oscar fan favorite hashtag, and obviously if you guys have seen it and been following it, like all these fans have just been like bombarding the votes. So like Cinderella was at
winning.
one point number one, and then there was obviously Snyder Cut, or Army of the Dead. So what's fascinating about it is that like that is a good tool in terms of like getting people to tune in to see if theirs makes it. But at the end of the day, you're just dealing with the internet where people can like bombard reviews and like drop percentages or build algorithms that make like 1,000 votes for one vote. You know what I mean? It's so ridiculous. So like it means nothing, but I get the marketing aspect of it was smart in terms of like wanting to do that and bring more people to the show. But then nominate No Way Home. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't make any sense. Like why?
The problem is the body of people, much smaller body of people who are making the broadcast decisions are not the same large, uncontrollable amount of people who are voting. Like, I'm sure the people who are producing the show are like, oh, wouldn't it be great if Zendaya and Tom Holland showed up, or Zendaya and Tom Holland showed up and they got to be the stars of this show because they were in every category. Like, they would love that if that was what they were given when they said, here, you're in charge of producing the broadcast. But they're not. Like, it's easy for us to say nominate them if you want more views, but like that technically.
I would love to hear from the nominees in the production design and makeup and hairstyling categories. Because
there was a write-up on Variety, I believe, spoke with someone anonymously, and they described the Zoom call. They invited them all into a Zoom call, and they thought it was going to be about COVID policies on the day. And I don't think they had like misled them. I think someone had mentioned like, oh, I think it's going to be this because I was in a meeting earlier about that. And it was about, hey, we're not going to actually live broadcast your categories. And it was about their reaction. And I believe the word they used to describe it was aghast.
Oh, interesting.
But yeah, there's
just
a write-up on
because
Variety about that.
I would have been interested to see if like someone from production design was like, I don't necessarily care. I'm still getting my Oscar. I'm still an Oscar winner. Like, I just don't get a chance to thank my mom.
So that's my other point. Before we move on, my final point is I want to see what it looks like. How are these like they're saying they're pre-recording them? Are they going up and talking to a bunch of empty tables, or are they pre-recording them while everyone's going to be there? Because I think a part of the magic that you dream about when you're a kid is that you're standing in your imagination or whatever.
Yeah.
Awards are meaningless, but when you're dreaming about doing this as a kid, and the dream that's coming true is that moment on the stage. And are you giving your speech to people who are setting up silverware and things or
because everyone else is on the carpet?
That's my point. Like, I'm if that's the case, then yeah, it's like, well, you're just kind of diminishing something. But
well, listen, we're not going to solve it today, and the Academy isn't going to solve it before this year's ceremony. So we will continue to talk about it.
Because there is, as of this recording, there is still such an uproar. In fact, there's a trending, there's a hashtag on Twitter right now that's just hashtag present all 23. Do you
restore
guys
the
think
Oscarverse?
that,
Is it hashtag restore
kind
the Oscarverse?
of? Do you guys think that the Academy reverses their decision once again, or do you think they go, look, we already did that once, we got to double down on this?
No,
I don't think so.
that they do.
No,
I think if they do, they look even more foolish. To be honest,
correct me if I'm wrong, Jake. Before they were just going to cut the categories, they weren't actually going to cut them into the show, right? Wasn't that the issue in 2018? They were just going to not.
Yeah,
they were just going to like give them to them and not. So I think
2018 is another life ago.
True. I think that's the difference here that they can justify the backlash with of like, they're still going to see them.
There was a while, not that long ago, when we were having conversations about like just how long it took the people to get, if you were in the back of the room, right? Like, we're wasting a lot of time as we watch these people walk to the front of the stage.
Well, don't forget, there were some years where they honored, like they gave the Oscar, they put the microphone like in the audience.
Oh yeah, they tried that for a little while.
Yeah, and that ticked people off.
God,
so the solution was, screw you, we just won't give you one. Well, yeah, because people care about this.
It's fascinating. And here's why I don't think they're going to reverse it, because as Kevin has said, no one cares about the show. No one cares.
Well,
I care. There's a trending event happening on social media, like in the larger sphere.
We do.
I'm saying
we do.
Yeah. Outside
Seth
of our
Rogen
industry,
said it that pretty little more.
Again,
what did he say? Can you not say?
He said no. He said no one. Didn't he say essentially no one cares about the Oscars?
Yeah.
Like that's what Rogan was saying. Yeah,
in a general audience sense.
We do. Yeah.
Which is why, to my point, you should stream it online so that anyone who wants to see it can see it, and you'll make your ad money. And
well, and if I'm being honest, if I didn't have to watch it this year because of work, I don't necessarily. I'm of that mindset of award shows now, kind of like
we started out as awards blend.
Well, now we've blended it,
and we evolved. We evolved. I don't know. We'll see how it all shakes out. But in the meantime, we're going to take a break because we're going to sell some ads and pay for the show. Talk to you guys on the other side. It's kind of interesting that we are transitioning from the Academy being a little bit out of touch in terms of the movies that people watch to a segment on the Critics' Choice Super Awards nominations, which got announced this week as well, too. And full disclosure, all three of us are members of the Critics' Choice. And even more fuller disclosure, I am the Critics' Choice board member who is in charge of the Super Awards, because Cinema Blend is one of those sites that powers a lot of the genre stuff that was recognized. So we want to get into the award nominations and the different categories that were announced, because we're only in our second year of the Critics' Choice Super Awards. And so across the industry, by and large, the first year, we were met with a lot of, what is this? Like, what is this? What are you doing? What's the point? And the point a little bit is that these categories, and Kevin makes this point a lot when it comes to awards, these are categories that recognize the movies and television shows in this instance that more people are paying attention to. Kevin lobbies for comedies all the time. The Super Awards recognizes comic book, horror, sci-fi, and action adventure. And so you end up with a lot of titles that are the stuff that people are flocking to. Like we have No Way Home, and we have Shang-Chi and Eternals and Jungle Cruise. Like The Rock gets nominated for Jungle Cruise. Suicide Squad gets nominated in superhero category, and John Cena gets recognized. Margot Robbie gets something for Suicide Squad. In horror, you have titles like Quiet Place 2 and Malignant and Candyman. Like, they're movies that people are coming out to go see. And I think year over year, as we continue to push what the idea of the Super Awards is and how people can compete for them, they're going to become the more populist sort of award show, because people want to see like, if we can ever get to a point where the stars are showing up to this, it'd be amazing to get one or two people. Like Gabe mentioned, Tom Holland and Zendaya, they're both nominated for their work in No Way Home. And if they were to show up to accept, I think it would probably get a better rating than whatever the Academy's going to end up with. So, Jakey, you saw the nominations. What are your thoughts on the Super Awards in general?
I mean, I think they're probably the most sort of like relatable nominations that I've seen. And it's a reminder that these things aren't just popcorn entertainment that we walk into and watch and then forget about when we walk out. Like, there are individual crafts that are incredible just as much as they are in Power of the Dog or Belfast or West Side Story or whatever the case may be. Like, Tom Holland did give a great performance in No Way Home, and Zendaya did give an amazing performance in No Way Home. And it's a reminder that, like, hey, like, you know, and also, I mean, honestly, I was thrilled to see Midnight Mass get so many nominations. You guys know I was a massive fan of Mike Flanagan's Midnight Mass, and I was glad to see something like that get so many nominations and hopefully win, because my thought process behind that is maybe there's going to be 10 people who see Midnight Mass in the list of nominations and go, you know what, I've been meaning to watch that. I've been meaning to sit down, you know, like at this point, it's all cherries on top for No Way Home. There's not really much we can do that's really going to help that movie anymore that it's already been helped. But something like Midnight Mass could always use an extra few people and spreading the word out there. So those are the nominations that I am excited about.
Kev, did anything hit you when you looked over the Super Awards?
I mean, part of me just wishes that we didn't have to have a separate awards to award these movies. And you know, to be honest with you, it's cool that we have it because it is a great recognition of incredible art that was made. I mean, Margot Robbie's performance in Suicide Squad is incredible. I don't necessarily love that film, but her performance is amazing, and that's a very hard performance. The Harley Quinn's a very hard character to play, physically, emotionally, and again, this goes back to what Sean was alluding to. Is I just feel like it's ridiculous that we don't look at these genres of comedy and horror and action like we do drama. It is the same thing. It's acting, it's production, it's filmmaking, it's editing. It's, you know, I mean, like just because it's like might be R-rated or have like fart jokes or something, whatever it would be, like, you know, at the same time. But at the end of the day, these are still movies. These are still pieces of art. So I love that the Super Awards could be hopefully a bridge to later on where we don't have to have it separate. Like it should just be one thing. We should be able to look at all genres equally. But for now, it's a great thing to have because it's a great middle ground, because I don't think that we publicly, it's the same thing I always been saying for years about like performance capture, for example. When is the Academy going to realize that like Andy Serkis's performance in Planet of the Apes is the same thing as Benedict Cumberbatch in Power of the Dog? From a performance perspective, from an emotional perspective, from doing the performance, I'm not saying that their characters are all the same, but what Andy Serkis is doing on that set in a performance capture suit is the exact same thing that Cumberbatch is doing in Power of the Dog. They're both acting. And that's really what it comes down to. But because the Academy doesn't see the physical person, like Robin Williams in Aladdin or with voice work, they can't comprehend that it's a performance just as another performance would be. So to me, you know, Andy Serkis should have won years ago, but we haven't gotten to that point yet. So the Super Awards give us the ability to at least recognize these movies for what they are, because they should not be separated. It should just be one award show. But
let me give you a couple that I know you'll be really happy with. Jodie Comer got nominated for The Last Duel
Yes.
and for Free Guy.
And for Free Guy, which is amazing. Yeah.
And for Free Guy. Bob Odenkirk got nominated for Nobody, and I think Bob Odenkirk gave a terrific performance.
That the scene on the bus. Do you have any idea how hard that was to do? Like, that is an incredible performance. But because it's Nobody, because it's R-rated and it's a John Wick style action movie, we can't take it seriously. So it gets delegated to other awards shows.
Anya Taylor-Joy and Thomasin McKenzie got nominated for Last Night in Soho.
Cool.
That fantastic?
Did we send these out to like the talent's publicists? Like, have we heard from them at all? I mean, I'd love to get their reaction to.
So yesterday was a big blast on social. Like our social media team made a lot of graphics and promoted them, but we were still, complete transparency, behind the eight ball in terms of, promoting it as well as we should, because yes, we were making all of these graphics right up to the last minute, announcing who the nominees were going to be. We probably should have gotten in the ears of a lot more publicists a lot earlier to let them know that, like, hey, there's a good chance that Karen Gillan is going to go, because James Gunn and Karen Gillan both tweeted stuff about like Suicide Squad getting recognized.
So did Kate Siegel from Midnight Mass.
Exactly. So a lot of people who we caught their eye, and they were like, oh, this is really great. And a lot of them used the branding, Critics' Choice Super Awards, which is terrific. And I hope we get to the place where these become regular and they continue to promote and the stars actually legitimately want to get one. But we're still early. It's still second year. And I think we're still convincing the people of what it is. But for these reasons, for those nominations that I just read out, I think that we can continue to recognize fantastic performances.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so we'll keep going. All right, so before we move on,
I was going to ask really quickly, where can people see like the winners and all that?
That's a terrific deal. So on the Critics' Choice website, criticschoice.com, we have a Super Awards tab, and the nominations, all the nominees for film and television are listed there, criticschoice.com. They also got picked up by all four of the trades: Variety, Hollywood Reporter,
beautiful,
The Wrap, and Deadline. So if you search Super Awards and nominations, you guys will see what's there for movies and television. And then the awards themselves are going to be handed out on March 17th, probably in to speak to what we've been talking about here, a pre-produced half-hour show that we're going to be putting up on YouTube and all of our socials. So it'll have thank you speeches from the people who win and a lot of fancy graphics, and we'll hopefully pay a good bit of honor to the people who ended up winning those awards. So
was I nominated for anything?
Yes, you were. For sexiest man alive. Congratulations.
Who's my competition?
Kevin.
Shit.
You're going to win.
I was going to say I'm going to lose.
All right, I want to introduce a new segment that we're going to have on the show, probably monthly, because it feels like it's going to change. We are now going to conduct a live reading of the current cast list for Christopher Nolan's Oppenheimer.
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, now you got my attention.
All right. So,
guys,
as
we
of
aren't
right
ready.
now,
We're not ready.
As of February 23rd, here is the current cast list for Christopher Nolan's Oppenheimer.
Can we timestamp something real fast?
Of course, yes.
As we're recording this, they just started filming Oppenheimer, I believe, yesterday.
Yes.
Principal photography has begun. They are shooting 65 mil and 65 mil IMAX, and for the first time ever, I believe first time ever, 65 millimeter IMAX black and white.
That's insane.
Which is awesome. And they
is
released
the whole
a photo.
movie going to be in black and white?
It sounds like partially.
Partially? All right. Well, here's the list of the current actors. Kevin, what if you got an email that said, come to the set of Oppenheimer? Would you die?
I don't know that I'd be able to make it. I feel like I'd be...
I would take your spot.
I wouldn't be able to handle watching Christopher Nolan direct in person. It would be... I saw footage of Cillian Murphy walking on the set the other day, and like I just saw Hoyt van Hoytema, and I saw Nolan, and I'm just like, oh my God.
All
Too
right.
much.
Current cast list. Cillian Murphy, Emily Blunt, Robert Downey Jr., Matt Damon, Florence Pugh, Benny Safdie, Dylan Arnold, Rami Malek, Josh Hartnett, Dane DeHaan, Jack Quaid, Matthew Modine, Alden Ehrenreich, and David Krumholtz, the snarky elf from the Santa Claus. And finally, of course, his lucky charm, Kenneth Branagh, has been added to Oppenheimer. So we will be back next month with some new names added to the Oppenheimer cast list.
It's not going to be a monthly segment, but it was fun this week.
I think they're going to keep adding names even after the movie has been released.
Yeah.
Well, who was it that tweeted a thing that's like, congratulations, you have been added to the cast of Oppenheimer.
All right, this week in movies. There's a movie going to Hulu called No Exit. And while we haven't seen it, I actually just received the book in a press kit. So I think I'm going to dive into that soon because it sounds like an interesting concept. Studio 666. I'll let you guys go because you guys like this more than I did. I understand that the concept behind Studio 666 is it's probably so bad that it's good, but it never got to that point for me. It just stayed in the this is so bad kind of thing.
I never thought it was bad though. I never really thought it was so bad. It's good. Like I enjoyed seeing all the guys together. It seemed like they had a lot of fun making this very kind of goofy, insanely brutal horror film. And that,
well, tell them what it is. It's the Foo Fighters.
Yes, it's the Foo Fighters. Yeah, and they're looking for inspiration for their next album, and so they kind of move into this house, and they're kind of hoping the sound of the house sort of translates into the album itself. And needless to say, there's some dark and demonic things in the house that end up inhabiting Dave Grohl. And I just thought it was a lot of fun. And I feel like especially if you're a horror fan, I feel like it's made by horror fans. I feel like it's made for fans of Foo Fighters. It's made like they all clearly had a blast making it. And I feel like that translates into the screen. Therefore, I feel like I was kind of part of like in on the joke in a weird way. Like I never felt like they were taking themselves too seriously, so I didn't feel like I had to take the film too seriously. To me, it's not a so bad it's good kind of film. I just enjoyed it. Look, I'm not saying it's a classic or anything. I'm just saying that I enjoyed it. I had a good time based on sort of the vibe that I was getting from them. Kevin, did you feel like it was supposed to be a like so bad it's good kind of thing?
I had so much fun with it. I mean, personally, I feel like this movie was like made for me because not only does it have like a heavy metal aspect to it, so like for people who don't know, basically as Jake was mentioning, they move into this house that has a horror history. Something brutal happened in the house in the 90s to another band that was there that was like a metal band, and that metal band is actually Foo Fighters doing that music, which is really cool. I think they even released one of the tracks. The band is called like Dream Widow or something, I believe. Jake, I don't remember the name of the band specifically, but that on top of John Carpenter being involved in it, working in the film, and just like it was just like, I love Tenacious D, The Pick of Destiny. It's one of my favorite comedies. And I just, I thought Dave Grohl was hilarious as Satan in that film. So to me, this kind of like plays within that same sandbox as Tenacious D. It's, I love metal. I love rock. I love horror movies. They do go extremely, extremely violent on this. I mean, this is definitely a very hard R-rated film. But I just loved like watching them in the living room, just crunching out metal riffs, and like there's just some funny parts where like Dave's like yelling at like Taylor to do. I mean, I'm a Foo Fighters fan, so I know their names like in that sense. Like I'm a fan of the group, so I liked watching them in this setting and just kind of like spending time with them. Have we seen it before? Sure, we've seen. I mean, this is pulling from classic horror elements. I believe Carpenter wrote the theme for the movie.
Yeah.
I could be wrong on that.
Contributed to it at least.
Yeah, it's really cool. I mean, to me, this is just a fun. If you're a big rock and roll fan or a metal fan or a horror fan, I thought Whitney Cummings was funny in it. It worked. To me, it worked. I love spending time with the guys. I thought Grohl was great.
Well, Dave Grohl is crazy charismatic. Like he has screen presence for days, and he always has through their videos. Like Foo Fighters have always had interesting videos, and I always believed if he wanted to transition into some form of acting, that he's just gifted for it. And he's always compelling to watch. So
I listen to Howard Stern every day, and like they had Dave and Taylor on. I think it was last week. It was a week after we had spoken to them for the press junket, and Howard brought up an interesting point about how fascinating it is that Dave Grohl got a second shot in terms of like, and what I mean by that is you don't normally see that. Like you see somebody come out with the gate with a very successful band. Obviously Nirvana was massive, but then to create your own band. I mean, you guys know the first Foo Fighters album, he recorded all the instruments himself. It's insane. And Foo Fighters are now, I mean, they sell out everywhere. Like these guys, I mean, obviously everyone knows they're a big band, but for Foo Fighters to be as successful as they are in the wake of Nirvana is incredible to me. And I think it just shows you how talented Grohl is. And obviously you bring over Pat Smear. I mean, like to me, it was basically, you know, letting Kurt's legacy live on through the next band, and what Nirvana had done for grunge and rock, Foo Fighters was able to build off of that and become their own sound. And then, like, you know, if you see Foo Fighters live, the cool part about it is, and this is just cool, is to watch Dave go back onto the drums and then Taylor come out front and he'll do his Queen track, Somebody to Love, a cover. But even in this movie, it's cool to see Dave on drums, like just to see him pop on a drum set and I mean, like, I'm telling you, when I was a kid, I was in this band. I was in a band called Descent of Man, and I remember we played outside. That. Yeah, I mean, I've been in bands
to hear this
my whole life. College, I was in the I have pictures. In college, I was in a band called the Ex-Presidents. That was after Point Break. This was Descent of Man, and my buddy had a drum set. And the first song I ever learned how to play on drums was "Smells Like Teen Spirit." Just that beginning part. Dun, 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 dun. I mean, that was such an iconic. That video was incredible. I know I'm going off on a tangent here, but like to watch that movie was cool because it kind of brought me back to understanding Dave's arc in the music industry. And like Stern was talking about how the Foo Fighters were inducted into the Hall of Fame by Paul McCartney. Wow. McCartney kind of had a second win too, if you think about it, right?
Wings and his solo career.
Right. And so basically I think in the speech for Hall of Fame, McCartney was basically saying like the Foo Fighters are similar to Dave's arc is similar to what I did with the Beatles. I was in the Beatles, he was in Nirvana, two of the biggest bands of all time, and they were able to continue on outside of that element. I mean, I'm obsessed right now with this Paul McCartney Wings song called "Let Me Roll It" from Licorice Pizza, and I'm just like, it is amazing that Grohl got that second chance with Foo Fighters.
So
it's awesome.
Imagine this in an alternate universe where the Foo Fighters, where Nirvana somehow stays together, right? Mm-hmm. And Dave Grohl just remains the drummer of Nirvana, you know?
Still big
Of
deal.
Course. Sure, of course. But like never branches out, never becomes the songwriter that he was meant to be, or, you know, there's none of that alternate music. Like I find that kind of stuff fascinating. Or who's to say that the drummer of, you know, The Who, well, not The Who, I guess he would be a genius. But like some other band who never get a chance to shine, you know?
Sean brings up a really interesting point. I had a buddy of mine over recently, and I'm weird. I'm a huge hip hop fan, and I'm also a huge metal fan. So those are my two favorite genres of music. And we were having this exact discussion, Sean, about Biggie, because you know Biggie puts out two classics, "Ready to Die" and "Life After Death," and then you just start to imagine what else would have come out of that guy.
Sure.
Like where would we, if Biggie was alive today? How would rap music be different? I consider him the greatest rapper of all time. That's a whole nother discussion we can get into. But in terms of your question about Nirvana, like what is Nirvana's music in 2022 if Kurt Cobain is alive?
Sure.
And, you know, it is a fascinating thing to think about, but then you have no Foo Fighters.
Yeah.
It's so weird. It's weird to think about it. Yeah. I'm with you. I think about that a lot.
From the music of Nirvana to the musical Cyrano. We had Joe Wright on the show earlier, and his film is now reaching theaters. Cyrano is another tale of Cyrano de Bergerac, of the quote-unquote non-visually appealing lead character who has to write really wonderful things so that a very attractive lead character can win over another very attractive lead character. And my favorite version of this story is Roxanne, with Steve Martin and Daryl Hannah. Just a completely charming, totally winning romantic comedy. Cyrano, I didn't love it. And one of the things that struck me about it, my biggest takeaway from it was that I don't think Peter Dinklage can sing. And I've had a conversation with people after the fact that was the point, that his character wasn't necessarily supposed to be a singer. And I found it really interesting because I didn't know going into this movie that this was a stage version that these actors have done before, that they've been in the show. And that's part of why Joe Wright sort of picked them up and put them into the movie for it. But I could not get past the fact that as great of an actor as Peter Dinklage is, whenever his character started to sing in a musical of which he's the lead, it kind of took me out of it. So did you guys like it more than I did?
I mean, it's been a while since we've seen it, as you said. We saw it a while back. I remember watching it. It was the same day that I saw. It was another big film. I can't remember. I remember the theater I was in though. But I remember like I had two films that day, and I was going to go Cyrano, and I sat down and watched it. I knew nothing about it. I did not watch a trailer. One of my favorite things nowadays is like to go into a film without watching a trailer. I did it recently with this movie Fresh, just to kind of see like because
that's one to do it for.
What's funny is when you don't watch a trailer, like when you watch a trailer, if you think about it, your brain then becomes designed to wait for the quote unquote needle drop of the plot, right? So like you're like, no matter what's happening, like in the first 30 minutes of a film, like a great example of this would be from Dusk Till Dawn. I don't remember how they marketed that film, but like if you watch that film without seeing the trailer and you just saw the first hour and you're like, okay, this is a film about two guys who were on the run, two murderers.
I love watching that movie with people who have no idea what it's about.
Right. And then all of a sudden it shifts to a vampire film. If you didn't watch the trailer, that needle drop moment, I don't know if needle drop is the right term for it, but like that moment, that change is so effective. So like when I watched Fresh, I didn't know anything about the plot. And so when that needle drop happened, I'm like, oh my God, this is crazy.
I think the metaphor you're looking for is a record scratch moment.
Record scratch.
It's more
there you go.
kind of like it. Yeah.
Shifting the genre, shifting it. So going back to Cyrano, I sat down, knew nothing about it. I knew that there was a stage element to it. So to me, I didn't understand. I didn't know what I was getting myself into. And I was blown away by the production value of it. But I just didn't connect to the story, and I thought Dinklage was good. He was actually, I would argue that he was great in the film. Haley Bennett is great as well. I mean, Joe Wright is no stranger to great production design. I mean, there are some shots in this film that are wicked. There's a wicked fight sequence up a staircase with Dinklage, which I thought was really cool. But outside of that, like as I'm sitting here talking to you guys months later after watching it, I don't remember much about it in terms of like anything that stayed with me, except for that staircase fight. Everything outside of that, the movie just didn't resonate on an emotional level to me. And I get what they were going for. And I think Haley Bennett's a really, really, really talented actor. I just remember leaving the theater going, that was a solid production from Joe Wright that I probably would not pay to see in theaters. Only because, not that it didn't look good, I just didn't find myself engrossed in the story as much as I wanted to. You look at Atonement or Pride and Prejudice or even Anna Karenina, those films I felt grabbed me more. Yeah, they those grabbed me more as an audience member. Cyrano, I love Dinklage. I just didn't find it to be resonated. And this is actually a really interesting way to review a film because we're talking on February 23rd for a movie that we saw in October. Now, granted, if I watched it again today, would my opinion shift? Possibly. My mood could be different. My life, I could have lived more life and learned more things, and that movie could hit me a lot differently. You know what I mean? So it is important to take this review with that perspective. But it's also interesting to think about the longevity of it. What did that film leave me? Not much.
Yeah. Well, so Jake saw it more recently, so I want to get his take on it.
Yeah, I saw it a second time. Well done. I saw it a second time. I like the movie a lot more than you guys, I think. Aside from all the reasons that you guys said, I actually really enjoyed the music. I thought a lot of the musical performances were fantastic. In fact, there's a sequence where they sing a song about heaven while they're marching off into war. And that sequence alone was probably one of my favorite movie scenes that I saw last year. I thought that was incredible. I've always liked that story. I've always thought that was a really interesting story that we have seen 1,000 times before. And you're right. I think Roxanne's probably the best version of it. But everything about this, I really liked. I thought it took me a second to kind of, I don't know, it probably took me a solid 15 minutes of watching it to kind of go, okay, this is what kind of movie this is going to be. Yeah. Because for the first 15 minutes, I'm going, wait, what is it? What kind of vibe is this movie giving me? Like but then once I kind of like sort of like shook myself into it and went, okay, like, all right, I get it. I'm in.
I'll even say this about Joe Wright. Like, Pan was a misfire as far as most people consider it to be. But I think he loved the story. I think he really wanted to tell it. When I was watching this, I didn't get the impression that if Joe Wright has the quote unquote 10 films, that Tarantino has, like I didn't get the impression that he really loved this story or really wanted to tell it. So I don't know. It's also
been a very strange release. Like you have to understand, like from our perspective in the business, we covered this film in October, and then it got pushed back over and over again. And again, that has nothing to do with the quality of the film. But it does give you pause to think about, like, you know, does the studio really have a lot of confidence in this movie? And I'm not saying that when a movie's delayed.
I think that they just misfired and overestimated their Oscar potential. I really thought that they were going to be on the receiving end of a lot of Oscar love, and thought that this particular release date would most benefit from them getting nominations for Best Actor and Best Picture and Best this and Best that. And then they realized, oh shit, we don't get those nominations if people haven't actually seen the film. I think they did
were
a
Joe
very
wrong.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Yeah, they were.
Gabe?
The Academy said Cyrano to you.
Stop. No, Jake, it's not any better.
This week's blend game is honoring the great John Singleton, the late great John Singleton, who passed away recently at the age of 51. And we talk about Kevin, when you talk about artists who go too soon and probably still have some great work left in them. John Singleton left us too early. I'm going to go first because I'm going to pick something that I don't think you guys picked, and I'm going with Poetic Justice.
Poetic Justice.
Yeah.
But there are a couple of really strong reasons why I love this movie. I really, really appreciate it. Following up Boys in the Hood is really hard, right? Like there was so much attention on John Singleton and what was his next story going to be. And I thought Poetic Justice was a terrific script. I love the fact that he directs his own scripts for the most part. I think he later on in life, he probably took on other people's screenplays, but early on he wrote the stuff that he was directing. And the two leads in it, it's funny, we were talking about Dave Grohl earlier as an artist or a musician with incredible screen presence. Janet Jackson and Tupac Shakur were unbelievably charismatic on the screen. The camera just followed them, you know, and it wasn't a quote unquote, like, you know, rom-com type thing. It was a difficult relationship story set against the backdrop of, you know, really tough LA neighborhoods that John Singleton liked to showcase. And I thought that the way that the two of them went through the course of that movie was really, really fantastic. And I kind of love the fact that it's a time capsule, you know, sort of capture the moment of Tupac in that era. You know, like you'll always be able to go over to the shelf and pull it down and put Poetic Justice on, and he's back there with us. But Janet Jackson, I have no idea why Janet Jackson didn't do more films. Like she was really great in that movie, and I just think had so much screen presence that I thought that was going to be the launch of almost kind of like with Whitney Houston, when Whitney Houston did The Bodyguard, where you were like, oh, if she wanted to be, she could be an enormous film star, and then never really pursued it. So
well, she had a string of popular hits in the 90s.
Yeah,
Waiting to
Exhale was big.
and The Preacher's Wife. And
okay. Yeah, that's
she
true.
had a pretty good run. Yeah,
that's true. So I went with Poetic Justice for that reason for my John Singleton choices. Jake, where'd you go?
I went, and I won't speak too long on it because I'm assuming Kevin did as well. I went with Boys in the Hood.
Sure.
Not just because of everything that it did right, but it was also a really harsh reminder of how wrong so many other films had gotten just the gang culture at that time. I mean, so much about this film, and we're talking, this is his directorial debut. It was everything about it just felt authentic. It felt like this story was being told by someone who needed to tell this story, someone that had the right to tell this story, someone that knew how to tell this story. And it almost made you look kind of at a lot of films, not just before, but since, and go, look, if you don't know how to do it this well, just don't do it. And there are so many X factors about that. And kind of like what you said with Poetic Justice, where it's just like that movie's it's 30 years old. And you pop it on the DVD, Jesus Christ. You pop it on your TV, you know, right now, and it's just as relevant for some of the same and some of the different reasons as it was 30 years ago. And to me, that's the ultimate test of a film, not just how relevant it can be the day it's released, but how relevant it can be 30 years later. It still feels like a snapshot of then, but somehow magically feels like a snapshot of now. And that is kind of what blows my mind about it.
And almost any film that comes up that's based there or about anything about there, can't help but reference, what John Singleton captured.
It's the same way that you can't make a movie about a shark without someone going, well, like in Jaws, X, Y, and Z. You can't make a movie about that world, that culture, that period of America without someone going, well, like it was done perfectly with Boys in the Hood.
Sure. Kev, I know you're a huge fan.
Oh yeah, I mean, it just amazes me that he was 24 when he made that film, or when he was nominated. I mean, that movie got Best Director nomination and I believe original screenplay. And for your directorial debut right out the gate at 1991, you're in your 20s. I mean, like Jake made a great point about the voice. Like, I mean, at the end of the day, Boys in the Hood is a director's film. It comes from you feel Singleton speaking to you, not like that it takes you out of the film, but this is coming from a very, very real and true place. I mean, for somebody to come out the gate and do Boys in the Hood, Poetic Justice, and then Higher Learning. Yeah. I mean, that three punch is so awesome. And like later on in his career, he did a great movie that I liked called Baby Boy, which I almost chose because Baby Boy was a movie that I loved.
A lot of people love Baby Boy.
Great movie. But the only reason why that movie was in my mind was because that was like, I believe if I'm accurate on it in terms of my timing, I think I saw Baby Boy first.
Who was
then I
in
went
it?
back.
Was Tyrese
and also
Cuba Gooding Jr.'s
Taraji
brother,
P.
isn't he?
Henson.
Okay.
Isn't Cuba Gooding Jr.'s brother from Smart Guy?
Taraji P. Henson. I mean,
That's
I'm
not
trying
Cuba
to
Gooding
remember.
Jr.'s brother.
No, I know. I'm trying to remember the cast in my head, but it was definitely Tyrese and Taraji P. Henson. I don't know about Cuba Gooding.
It was one of
Jr.'s brother.
Tyrese's earliest films, wasn't it? One of the first ones that he was in. Gotcha.
Yeah, and I just remember like seeing it at AMC Hampton 24, and then like, not that I didn't know who Singleton was, but I went back.
Oh my God, it looks just like him.
Cuba Gooding Jr.'s
And
brother.
I went back and watched like a lot of Singleton's earlier work. So I was just really kind of, Boys in the Hood was just like, there was just something like, there's something that it captured that I'm so happy that film captured it and it exists forever now. You know, it's a moment. It was a movie that needed to be made. It is a movie that needed to be seen. You're talking about some of the cast is incredible. Obviously, I always found just the idea of the importance of that film and just kind of the vibe of it, the way it was executed and shot and scored and just the music. It's incredible. I love that movie.
I want to bring Ice Cube from Boys in the Hood to the future and show him Are We There Yet? Do you think he'd be
not Are We There Yet too?
Don't you think he would be like, what happened to me? Poor Ice Cube. I mean, he went that family route. It's easy to go.
Kev, do you want to know my pick?
Yeah.
What? You never make a pick.
Too Fast, Too Furious, baby.
I knew it. I was Too Fast, Too Furious.
I joke, but I also, that would probably be my pick. Long-time listeners know that even though I invented this game, I don't like playing this game.
Never.
And when I do, I usually just look for nostalgia, things that affected me as a kid. It's not necessarily their best, which is not what we're doing or whatever. And for me, Too Fast, Too Furious, pivotal movie.
Right,
Baby Boy was that movie for me, weirdly, with him. But even though I don't think it's his best, I think Boys in the Hood's his best. But
yeah,
it's interesting.
John Palmer, Michael Breen, Harry Lichtman, and many, many others went with Boys in the Hood. Zen Jake picked Four Brothers.
It's a great movie.
That's
Four
a
Brothers is really good.
solid film. Yeah. He only made 9 movies? I was reading this.
Awesome.
Well, he did a lot of TV projects as well.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like he was involved with, I think he was like actively involved with Snowfall before he passed away.
403 Fish went with Poetic Justice, and then Rachel Ho, a longtime listener, Rachel Ho went with Shaft, his first version of Shaft, which the first one was good. I believe some people were saying that the sequel, the more recent one that they did, was not so good. So
no,
that's a shame. Okay,
Singleton's
for next week.
Good.
Yeah, it was good, actually. For next week, you can reach out on Twitter using hashtag Ava DuVernay Blend. We're going to be doing the films of Ava DuVernay. So let us know your pick via email at realblend@simpleblend.com or also using that hashtag. Gabe has a point that he would like to make.
You say the films, I think with her limited filmography and given how important her documentary work and her television work is.
Sure. Yeah.
Definitely open it up beyond films for the folks at home.
That makes sense. And producing too. She produces a lot of really interesting things.
She produces,
as well,
if you like, if something she produces, yeah. But I think her work as a director, all of it is just some incredible stuff. So don't be afraid to pick a documentary.
Can we also say that next week we can just say it. We have a big guest.
Say it.
We have Matt Reeves joining us, director of the Batman. We're all going to review the Batman. We've all seen the Batman.
Well,
Gabe hasn't seen it.
Oh yeah. I mean, at this moment, I think the embargo lifts on the 28th of February, so it'll be perfect timing for us to do the show. And Reeves will join us, and he was a great guest. And if you're into like lenses and camera work and like nerdy stuff, Kev,
they changed the title of that movie. You didn't know?
No.
Now it's just called Vengeance.
Oh, awesome. Yeah.
You're muted, Kev.
Jake is muted. Jake is muted somehow.
Sorry, my dog was barking. But you joke, but whenever they were doing a lot of the second unit stuff here in Chicago, like the code name that they were shooting under was Vengeance. And I was like, guys, like if you're trying to hide that from people, that's it. Because at that point there had already been the trailer where he was like, I'm Vengeance. And I was like, you guys are doing a really bad job of hiding this production.
Their code name was Batmobile.
That scene in the first teaser, that scene is insane.
Oh, and if you want to see Robert Pattinson talking about that scene, it's in Kevin's interviews that are available on the YouTube. So
did you hear what he said
on the YouTube?
Like, that was nuts. What he said.
It was terrific.
Anyway,
yes.
Yeah.
All right, Matt Reeves next week. We're going to be doing a mailbag for our next premium episode, and again, you can access all of those episodes at cinemablend.com/ReelBlend Premium. You can follow us online at Jake's Takes, at Kevin McCarthy TV, at Sean_O'Connell. I keep hitting this and it goes to the top of the notes, Gabe. It's annoying.
Such a relatable
at Gabe
issue.
Kovach, and at ReelBlend. We'll be back next week with Matt Reeves, as mentioned. And so until then, Oppenheimer.
Hockey pads.
Oh, Oppenheimer's a good one.
Oh, I'm down for Oppenheimer.
Is Oppenheimer the name of the musical, Jake? Ooh, Oppenheimer.
Yes. Ooh, Oppenheimer.
Oppenheimer.